and welcome back to Teen Story Share. So today we're going to be reading a story from Tatterhood and Other Tales, edited by Ethel, Johnston, Phelps, illustrations by Pamela, Baldwin, Ford, and this is a collection of many different stories that all have female heroines. So this story that we're going to read today is called Mastermaid, and it is a Norse tale. And the author's note here says, or the editor's note says, variations of this Norse tale exist in Britain, Ireland, and Russia, places where the Norse settled over 1,000 years ago, thus suggesting the antiquity of the story and theme. All the variations emphasize that the hero needs the heroine's wisdom in order to perform 3 very difficult tasks. And the version that this editor used to make this version is from G.W. Dasent's translation in Norwegian Folk Tales from 1859 from the collection of Asbjornsen and Moe. That is the source that they used for this folk tale. Okay, Mastermaid. Once upon a time there was a king who had several sons. The youngest son grew restless at home and wanted to go out into the world to seek adventures. His father tried to dissuade him, but it was no use. "Very well," said the king as he gave him his blessing. "You'll always find a welcome here when you return." After the young prince had traveled for some days, he came to a giant's house and knocked on the door. The giant was very pleased to see him. He said he could certainly use the services of a young man who was strong and willing. So the prince was given dinner and a room over the stable. The next morning the giant prepared to take his herd of goats out to pasture. Before he left he said, "You'll find me an easy master if you do as you are told. Today your task is to clean out the stable while I'm away. But you must not go into any of the rooms off the main hall or I will kill you." So, naturally, as soon as the giant went off with the goats, the prince became curious to see the forbidden rooms. The first 2 rooms contained large pots and various strange objects, but the 3rd room contained a handsome, bright-eyed young woman. "Well," she said in surprise, "what are you doing here?" "I've left my father's castle to seek adventure," said the prince, "and the giant has very kindly taken me into his service." "You may regret it," said she. "'Tis easy work," said the prince cheerfully. "All I have to do today is clean out the stable." "Yes, but how will you do it? For every shovelful of dung you toss out of the stable, 10 more will appear. But I will tell you how to succeed. You must turn the shovel around and toss with the handle. Then all the dung will fly out by itself." "That sounds easy," said he. So he stretched himself out comfortably and talked all day with Madge, for that was her name, of this and that, and they became good friends. In the later afternoon he went to the stable. First he tried using the shovel the usual way. The more he shoveled, the faster the pile of dung grew. So he hastily reversed the shovel as he had been told, and the dung flew out the door. In a trice the stable was clean. That evening the giant returned. "Have you cleaned out the stable?" "Yes, indeed, master." When the giant saw the clean stable, he growled, "You must have been talking to Mastermaid." "Mastermaid? What is that?" said the prince, pretending to look very stupid. "I did it myself, the way we do it at home." The next day, before the giant set off again with his herd, he told the lad his task was to fetch home his horse from the hillside. Again he warned him not to enter any other rooms in the house. As soon as the giant was gone, the prince went to visit his friend Madge, the Mastermaid. "An easy job today," he told her. "I've only to fetch the horse from the hillside. I fancy I can handle him no matter how fresh or skittery he may be." "It's not as easy as you think," she warned. "Fire and flames will come out of the nostrils of the horse as soon as you near it. But I've discovered some of the giant's magic, and I'll tell you what to do. Take the bit that hangs behind the door there and throw it right into the horse's mouth. Then he'll become tame." So again the prince sat down to talk with Madge, the Mastermaid, and a very agreeable day they had. Madge told him she had been captured and kept prisoner by the giant, but had been using her wits to learn some of the giant's magic spells. Giants, she said, were not really very clever. "I'm not either," said the prince sadly. "No matter," said Madge affectionately. "You have a warm heart and cheerful courage. That is what counts." "You never seem to worry," she sighed. "I wish I could be so merry and light-hearted." "Aye, but it is your cleverness and wisdom that saved me from the giant's vengeance." From this exchange you can guess that Madge and the prince were falling in love, and they spent the rest of the day talking of how happy they could be together, if only they could escape the giant. The day passed so quickly that the prince had quite forgotten the horse, until Madge reminded him of it when evening drew near. Off he went with the magic bit, and sure enough, the horse spewed out fiery flames as soon as the prince approached him. The prince threw the metal bit into the flames, and the horse became as quiet as a lamb. So the prince rode him home and waited for the giant. When the giant saw the horse standing quietly in the stable, he roared, "You never did this task by yourself! You've been talking to Mastermaid!" "Not me," said the prince, all innocence. "I'd like to see this Mastermaid you talk of." On the third day, before the giant went off with his herd, he said, "Today you must go to the devil and fetch me my fire tax." The prince whistled cheerfully as he went in to see Madge. He was confident that she would know how to deal with this task. "You must help me again," said he. "I've never been to the devil. I don't know the way, nor how much to collect." "Listen carefully, and I will tell you," said Madge. "Go to the steep rock on the hillside. Take the club that is lying there, and hit the rock 3 times. Out will come a creature glowing red with sparks of fire darting from his eyes. Tell him your errand, and when he asks how much gold, be sure to say, 'Only as much as I can carry.' If you do not say that, he will give you nothing." The prince gave Madge a hug and said, "Och, without you I'd be mincemeat by now. But let's forget that and talk of other things." So he entertained Madge with light talk until soon she was laughing merrily, and the day again passed quickly. Finally, Madge warned him it was growing late, and it was time to collect the fire tax. The prince climbed up the hillside to the rock, and all happened as Madge had said. The fiery creature grumbled that the prince was lucky to know the right answer, but he gave him as much gold and silver as he could carry. He brought it back to the giant's house, singing gaily as he went. "Where's my money from the devil?" demanded the giant as soon as he returned. "It's there on the bench," said the prince. "Now I'm sure you've been talking to Mastermaid," roared the giant. "I told you I'd wring your neck." "Mastermaid indeed," said the prince airily. "I wish I knew what it is. It must be a joke." "You'll know tomorrow," snarled the giant. The next day he took the prince into the Mastermaid's room and said to her, "Cut him up and boil him in that big pot for my dinner." Then he went into the other room and fell asleep. Taking all the old rags, shoes, and rubbish she could find, Madge put it into the large pot with water. "Let the giant sup on that," she said. Then she picked up a small sack of gold, a magic wand, a lump of salt, and a flask of water. From the shelf she took down a golden ball and a gold rooster and hen. Tying them all in a large kerchief, she set off with the prince as fast as they could go. In a few hours the giant woke up hungry and went to the pot for his dinner. As soon as he tasted it, he spat it out. When he found nothing but rags and rubbish in the pot, he knew what had happened. He let out an angry bellow that shook the house, and rushed after them with long giant strides. It wasn't long before he saw them in the distance. Madge threw down the lump of salt, which immediately turned into a huge mountain. But that didn't stop the giant, who bored a tunnel right through the mountain. Then Madge tossed out the water from the flask. The water became a broad sea, leaving the giant stranded on the other side. Now they felt they were safe, so they set out at once for the prince's castle. But when they drew near, the prince insisted they must not walk up to the castle on foot like beggars. It was more seemly, he said, that Madge, his betrothed, should arrive in a coach. Wait here but half an hour while I go home for the coach and horses in my father's stable. Then I can bring you properly to my father's castle. Madge did not want him to do this. She had the power of foresight, and she knew further tests and danger lay ahead. The giant's revenge could follow them here. Do not go back to the castle alone without me, she said. Once you are there, you will forget me and all that has happened between us. Don't worry, Madge, said the prince. I could never forget you. I love you too dearly. He was so eager to do her this honor that finally Madge assented, but she warned him, You must go straight to the stables for the horses and return here. You must not speak to anyone, and above all you must not eat anything, for if you do we will suffer much trouble and grief. The prince promised to do all this. He thought there was little chance he could forget his beloved Madge and their escape from the giant. When the prince arrived at the king's castle, a great feast was being held, for his eldest brother had just been married. The castle was filled with a great crowd of people, and all were merrily rejoicing. The prince spoke to no one, nor would he eat anything. He went straight to the stables and harnessed the horses. Now suddenly there appeared beside him a bewitching red-haired maiden, who seemed to be one of the wedding guests, but she had, of course, been sent there by the giant. You must be hungry and thirsty after your journey, said she, smiling. If you won't eat any food, at least have a bite of my apple. Hungry and thirsty he was, and bewitched as well, so he took a bite of the juicy apple. At once he forgot all about Madge. I must be daft, he said. Why am I harnessing a coach and horses? He put them back in the stable and went along with the red-haired maiden to join the merrymaking. The wedding celebration went on for weeks, as was the custom in those days. The prince was enchanted by the red-haired maiden, and at the end of this time he was easily persuaded to announce their betrothal. In the meantime, Madge had waited for the prince's return. When he did not come back, she feared he was under a spell and had indeed forgotten her. But she had not saved him from so many dangers only to abandon him now. She knew a few spells herself. So she walked on until she came to a deserted, broken-down hut. Here she decided to stay and at once set to work to clean it up. Then, remembering the giant's magic wand she had brought with her, she transformed the hut into a comfortable cottage with a garden of herbs and vegetables, and a clutch of plump hens. Very quickly, she became known around the countryside for her powers and skills. The day for the wedding of the young prince to the red-haired maiden was set, but when the bride-to-be got into the coach, it broke down. The trace pin had broken. When it was repaired, it broke again. The wheel fell off. When it was replaced, it fell off again. No matter what was done, the coach could not be made to move. The bride sat inside, raging with anger. At the castle, the king was impatient at the delay. The guests, waiting for the coach to bring the bride, laughed at first to see it hopelessly stranded. Then they grew uneasy. The coach has a spell on it, they murmured. The king's chamberlain, in charge of the procession, became more and more distraught. His wife, hearing the murmuring of the people, said to him, Someone has cast a spell. There will be no wedding unless you do something quickly. I've heard tell of a young woman at the edge of the forest who knows many charms. Send for her, and she may be able to help you. A messenger was dispatched at once, and thus it was that Madge was brought to the castle, carrying a golden ball, a gold rooster, and a gold hen. First, she asked to see the prince who was to be married. Her request was granted. Madge laid the gifts on the table before him. The gold hen pecked the golden ball over to the rooster, and he with his beak returned it to her. Back and forth it rolled. The prince was fascinated. See how they share the ball with each other? Yes, Madge replied, just as you and I shared danger in escaping from the giant. He looked at her in surprise, for he did not recognize her. Then he picked up the golden ball. At once the giant's enchantment was broken. The prince exclaimed that he remembered everything, and they embraced each other happily. The prince then told his father of his adventures, of his earlier betrothal to Madge, and how she had saved him. He said he loved her dearly and would marry no one but her, if she would still have him. Madge said she would, for with her wisdom and his cheerful nature they were sure to live happily ever after. As for the Redhaired Maiden, she slid quickly out of the stranded coach, and was never seen again in that country. The end. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you again next week for a Teen Story Share. Maybe you could leave a comment of what is your favorite folktale.